The envelope trembled in my hands as I stared at the lawyer's letterhead. My sister Charlotte's smug grin hovered in my peripheral vision, her voice like nails on glass. "See, everything worked out as it should," she cooed, false sweetness oozing from every syllable. I scanned the words again, praying they'd somehow change. In accordance with the revised will, dated 3 weeks prior to Harold Matthews' passing, the entire estate, including all properties and financial assets, is to be transferred to Charlotte Matthews. My name is Emma Matthews, and 2 months ago, I lost not only my father but also the inheritance I'd never sought yet always cherished as a symbol of his trust. The money wasn't the heartache, it was the betrayal. I'd been away, caring for my sick daughter, while Charlotte wormed her way into Dad's frail confidence and convinced him to rewrite his legacy. Charlotte's tone shifted, sharp and unapologetic. "Don't act so surprised, Emma. Someone had to step up while you were off playing nursemaid to your kid." She grabbed her designer handbag, her blazer crisp and pristine, undoubtedly bought with the inheritance she'd stolen. "Let's face it, you've always been terrible with money. This arrangement is better for everyone." I sat there in silence, a whirlwind of memories flashing through my mind. Long nights at Dad's side after his diagnosis. The sacrifices I made to be there when he started treatment. But 3 weeks before his death, when Lucy's pneumonia became life-threatening, I had no choice. I left to save my child, trusting Charlotte to do the right thing. Charlotte smirked, her nails clicking rhythmically on the desk. "Your daughter's fine now, isn't she?" A little cough, and you abandoned Dad in his last days. I was the one who stayed, who helped him see things clearly. My grip tightened around the envelope. "Clearly? You mean when he was barely coherent, you twisted his confusion to suit yourself?" "He'd never." "He did, and you'll have to accept it," she snapped, her polished facade slipping. Then, with calculated precision, she slid an ornate invitation across the table. "By the way, I'm getting married in 3 months. Marcus's family has high expectations, and as my only sister, you'll contribute. 20,000 should do." "You're joking," I said, stunned. "You just inherited everything. Dad's house, his accounts, his pension. And all of it is necessary to maintain my lifestyle." She cut in, dismissive. "The wedding must be perfect. Marcus deserves nothing less. You have a week to come up with the money." The audacity stole my breath. "Family helps family," she'd said. It had been my guiding principle all these years, but Charlotte had twisted it into something grotesque. I cleaned up her messes, covered her debts, and borne the weight of her recklessness. But this was the final straw. "I can't give you that kind of money," I said, my voice firm. "I'm a single mom on a teacher's salary." Charlotte's sneer deepened. "Then figure it out. Take a loan, sell something. I don't care. Just don't embarrass me." She stood, her Louboutins clicking on the polished floor. "And don't bother contesting the will. Dad was of sound mind, and I made sure every detail was airtight." As the door closed behind her, a quiet calm settled over me. Charlotte thought she'd won, but she didn't know the whole story. 3 months before Dad's health spiraled, during one of our late-night talks, he'd said, "Charlotte's always chasing glitter, but real wealth isn't flashy. It's what you leave behind for the right people." Dad had prepared for this. That evening, after Lucy had fallen asleep, I pulled out the documents Dad had entrusted to me, detailed records of offshore accounts, a trust fund in Lucy's name, and an art collection quietly transferred to my ownership. Charlotte had underestimated him and me. The next morning, I met with Mr. Peterson, Dad's trusted art dealer. "Your father was meticulous," he said, placing a portfolio before me. "The collection is worth at least $4 million. Tears pricked my eyes as I read Dad's final letter. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then Charlotte has taken the bait. I'm sorry for the pain, but I needed her to believe she'd won. The art, the investments, the trusts, they are yours for Lucy and your future. Let Charlotte learn the hard way that true wealth isn't in possessions but in character. Love always, Dad." I folded the letter carefully, my resolve hardening. Charlotte could bask in her illusion of triumph. Let her plan her grand wedding, revel in her supposed victory. When the time was right, she'd learn the truth. For now, I had work to do and a legacy to protect. The following weeks blurred into a stream of Charlotte's passive-aggressive texts and increasingly thinly veiled threats. Each morning, my phone buzzed with new demands. "The wedding planner needs the deposit," or "Marcus's mother expects all the immediate family to contribute equally." I ignored them all, quietly working behind the scenes to put my own plans in motion. "Mom, why is Aunt Charlotte being so mean?" Lucy asked one evening as she helped me stir a pot of soup. Her wide eyes were a mix of innocence and worry, too perceptive for an 8-year-old. She had sensed the tension. I put the spoon down, crouching to meet her gaze. "Sometimes people get so caught up in what they want that they forget what really matters." Lucy frowned thoughtfully, like when she didn't visit Grandpa in the hospital. Her words struck deep, but I smiled and pulled her into a hug. "Exactly like that. But don't worry, sweetheart. Grandpa knew who was really there for him." The doorbell rang just then, breaking the moment. Standing on my porch was Charlotte, immaculate as ever in a pristine white designer suit, an outfit that likely cost more than my monthly paycheck. "Finally decided to grace us with your presence," I said, holding the door open with a hint of sarcasm. "Cut the dramatics, Emma," she snapped, stepping inside and glancing around the modest living room as if she expected it to be beneath her. "I'm here because you've been ignoring my messages. The wedding is in 8 weeks, and you haven't contributed a dime." Before I could respond, Lucy peeked around the corner. Charlotte's face softened into a sugary smile. "Hello, darling. Has your mother told you? You're going to be a flower girl." Lucy looked up at me, unsure, and I rested a hand on her shoulder. "Actually, Charlotte, Lucy won't be participating in the wedding." Charlotte blinked, her expression shifting rapidly between disbelief and anger. "Excuse me? That's not a request, Emma. Marcus's family expects a proper wedding party. You can't just—" "I can, and I will," I interrupted coolly. "Lucy is not a prop for your perfect wedding, and neither am I." Her forced composure cracked. "Is this about the money?" she sneered, pulling out her phone. "Fine. I'll give you 2 more weeks, but after that, I expect you to pay your share. And for heaven's sake, start attending the planning meetings. The next one's tomorrow at the Ritz-Carlton. Don't embarrass me by showing up in your teacher clothes." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "I won't be there, and I won't be contributing." Her perfectly painted lips curled into a sneer. Ungrateful as ever, she spat. "After everything I've done for this family?" I felt Lucy's hand tighten in mine, grounding me. "Get out, Charlotte," I said quietly, my voice steady. "And don't come back until you've learned what family actually means." Charlotte's eyes narrowed into slits. "You have no idea what I can do, Emma. No idea at all." With that parting threat, she turned and stalked out, her designer heels clicking against the floor. After she left, I knelt to face Lucy, who looked uneasy. "Are we in trouble, Mom?" I smiled, brushing back a stray lock of her hair. "Not at all, sweetheart. We're just getting started." The next morning, I met with Mr. Harrison, Dad's longtime investment manager, in his downtown office. "The timing couldn't be better," he said, sliding a report across the table. "Your father's investments have grown substantially. The offshore accounts are secure, and the property developments in Singapore are on track to pay out major dividends." I scanned the numbers, my heart pounding. Charlotte had taken the obvious assets, but Dad's real legacy, carefully hidden from prying eyes, had been left to me. "How soon can we move on liquidating some of these?" "Within a week, if needed," Mr. Harrison assured me. "Good. I want everything ready before her wedding." That afternoon, while reviewing more of Dad's paperwork, I received a series of texts from Charlotte. "Where are you? People noticed your absence. Marcus's mother is asking questions. Stop making me look bad. This is your last chance. Don't test me." As if on cue, my phone rang. I answered to find Marcus's mother, Victoria, on the line. She'd only met me once, at Dad's funeral, but I remembered her sharp-eyed kindness. "Emma, dear, I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Mrs. Richardson. What can I do for you?" "Please call me Victoria," she said warmly. "I'm calling because I've heard some concerning things. Charlotte claims you're refusing to support the wedding out of spite. It doesn't quite match what I know of you." "Thank you for reaching out," I replied carefully. "Charlotte and I have had some disagreements about what family responsibility means." "I suspected as much," Victoria said with a wry chuckle. "You should know, Charlotte has been asking Marcus's relatives for loans, claiming she's under financial strain. Nearly 50,000 so far." 50,000. So that was why Charlotte was so desperate. The inheritance wasn't enough to fund her extravagant lifestyle. The realization made me smile inwardly. Thank you for telling me this, I said. I think it's time I attended one of these planning meetings after all. Splendid, Victoria said, her tone approving. I look forward to seeing you there. The next morning, I received another message from Charlotte. Let's talk. Lunch tomorrow? I showed Lucy the message. What do you think? Should we give Aunt Charlotte another chance? Lucy considered seriously before nodding. Grandpa always said people deserve second chances, even when they're mean. Out of the mouths of babes. Fine, I texted back. Café Laurent, noon. The next day, Charlotte was already seated when I arrived. She looked nervous, a far cry from her usual haughty self. You came, she said quickly. Look, Emma, I need your help. The wedding's gotten out of control, and the inheritance isn't as accessible as I thought. You've already blown through it, I said flatly. What a shock. Her lips tightened, but she pressed on. You've always been the responsible one. Help me fix this, and maybe we can renegotiate. I studied her carefully. There was desperation, but no real regret. She hadn't changed. Not yet. I'll help, I said finally, standing. But on my terms. Come to the gallery opening next week. Bring Marcus and his family. I think it'll be enlightening. The gallery opening was scheduled for 7 sharp, but I arrived early to assist Mr. Peterson with the final touches. Every piece from Dad's collection had been curated with care, telling the story of a lifetime spent in pursuit of beauty and meaning. The centerpiece, an undisclosed Monet that Dad had authenticated just months before his passing, stood concealed behind a deep crimson velvet curtain. Your father had an impeccable sense of timing, Mr. Peterson said as he adjusted a delicate sculpture on its pedestal. He'd have enjoyed watching tonight unfold. I smiled, thinking back to Dad's quiet lessons about patience and precision. This night wasn't just about art, it was about revealing a truth Charlotte never anticipated. The guest list was perfect. Serious collectors, museum representatives, and of course, Marcus's family. Charlotte couldn't resist attending something so high profile, especially if she thought it might elevate her status. Sure enough, she arrived at 7:15, fashionably late, arm in arm with Marcus. Draped in an expensive designer gown, her eyes gleamed as she took in the impressive crowd, clearly pleased with what she assumed was her achievement. She spotted me near the entrance and approached, a practiced smile on her face. Emma, she cooed, air kissing my cheek. I didn't realize you were involved with this little event. How quaint. I returned her smile, cool and unbothered. Oh, I'm more than just involved. Turning toward Mr. Peterson, I gave him a slight nod. Shall we begin? Mr. Peterson cleared his throat and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We're gathered here to celebrate an extraordinary private collection, the Matthews Collection, meticulously assembled over 3 decades by the late Harold Matthews. Charlotte's smile faltered as whispers rippled through the room. The Matthews Collection, she repeated under her breath, her tone sharp with disbelief. Yes, Mr. Peterson continued smoothly, now curated by his daughter Emma, who has generously agreed to showcase select pieces for tonight's event. I could see Charlotte's composure cracking as the implications settled in. Marcus's mother, Victoria, who had an astute eye for fine art, approached one of the featured paintings with interest. Emma, my dear, these pieces are magnificent. Harold always did have impeccable taste. Her voice carried admiration, and a subtle edge Charlotte couldn't miss. Thank you, I said graciously. Dad taught me everything I know about art, though Charlotte never quite had the patience for his lessons. Marcus joined his mother, his eyes wide with recognition as he studied another painting. Is that a Rothko? Victoria smiled knowingly. It certainly is. Pieces like these typically fetch 7 figures, at minimum. Charlotte's face turned pale as Marcus turned to her, clearly confused. Charlotte, why didn't you mention this collection before? And what's this about curation? Charlotte's nails dug into my arm as she hissed. What are you doing? This is supposed to be mine. Actually, I said, raising my voice just enough for nearby guests to hear. Dad transferred ownership of the collection to me well before his passing, along with a few other investments you weren't interested in. At that moment, Mr. Peterson unveiled the hidden Monet. A collective gasp filled the room as everyone took in the masterpiece. I felt Charlotte's grip weaken, her bravado crumbling. How much is it all worth? She whispered, her voice barely audible. The collection alone, close to 4 million. Add the offshore accounts and real estate investments, and it's significantly more. I gently pried her fingers from my arm. Dad always said you focus too much on appearances to recognize real value. Marcus stepped closer, his face hardening. Charlotte, what's going on? Why didn't you know about any of this? Because she was too busy manipulating Dad into changing his will, I said loud enough for Marcus's family to hear. She didn't realize Dad had already safeguarded the important assets. Victoria's sharp intake of breath was audible, and the murmurs around us grew louder. Charlotte's eyes darted around in panic, realizing that the foundation of her carefully curated life was beginning to crumble. You can't do this, she whispered, desperation clear in her voice. Emma, please, don't. I held her gaze, seeing not just the sister who had made my life difficult, but also someone lost and scrambling for control. She wasn't a villain, just someone too focused on the wrong things for far too long. I'm not here to ruin you, Charlotte, I said softly. But we need to talk. Now. Without waiting for her response, I led her to a private office off the main gallery floor. Once inside, she collapsed into a chair, all pretense gone. You've ruined everything, she muttered, though the fight had drained out of her voice. No, Charlotte. You did that yourself, with the debts, the reckless spending, the way you treated Dad when he needed us most. Tears shimmered in her eyes, threatening to spill over. So what happens now? Are you going to humiliate me in front of Marcus's family? Make me cancel the wedding? I shook my head. No, I'm going to help you. Her head snapped up, disbelief written all over her face. Why? Because it's what Dad would have wanted. I handed her a sealed envelope, the real letter Dad had written before he died. He trusted me to protect the legacy, including you. He knew you'd need guidance, not punishment. She opened the letter, tears finally breaking free as she read Dad's words. He knew me better than I knew myself, she whispered, wiping her cheeks. He knew both of us, I said gently. That's why he left me in charge, not just to manage the assets, but to take care of the family, including you. Charlotte met my eyes, something finally shifting in her expression. I've been awful to you, to everyone. Yes, you have. But like Lucy reminded me, everyone deserves a second chance. She gave a shaky laugh. Lucy's a smart kid. She is. And she misses the real Charlotte, the one who built blanket forts with me and sneaked cookies when we thought Dad wasn't looking. Charlotte sniffed, dabbing her face with a tissue. The wedding's in 3 weeks. Will you help me make it something Dad would have been proud of? I will, I promised. But first, let's go back out there and show Marcus's family who you really are, not the social climber, but my sister. Charlotte smiled weakly but genuinely for the first time in years. Thanks, Emma, for doing what I never would have. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of meaningful conversations and quiet reconciliation. 3 weeks later, I stood by Charlotte's side as she married Marcus in a simple but beautiful ceremony in Dad's garden. Lucy, beaming with pride, scattered rose petals down the aisle, happy to have her aunt back in her life. Dad's collection remained a symbol of his legacy, a reminder that real wealth isn't just in possessions but in understanding what truly matters. And as Charlotte and I began rebuilding our relationship, I realized that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or art. It's the wisdom to forgive, to grow, and to hold on to family when it counts most.